I've been carrying daily for 15 years, and every now and then a gun hits me so hard, I feel dumb for ignoring it. Happened a couple months ago at a dusty Arizona range. I grabbed a pistol I'd clowned on forever, shot 20 rounds, and literally laughed at myself mid-lane. Still carrying it today. This isn't another best Micro 9 list with the same Glocks and SIGs. This is about the quiet, overlooked ones that live in glove boxes and old holsters. The guns people wrote off or never noticed, yet they refuse to leave once someone actually runs them. Some cheap, some old, a couple Turkish, all sneaky reliable. Let's just jump in. PSA Dagger Micro. Yeah, the one everybody called a 299th Glock knockoff and then moved on. I did too, until I actually carried one every single day for 3 months straight, just to prove it would eventually choke. It never did. This thing is stupid small, 6.5 inches overall, 4.5 inch height, 1.1 inches wide, and the 3.4 inch barrel sits in a 15 round flush magazine that somehow doesn't print worse than a P365. They took the full-size dagger frame, chopped it way down, kept the optics cut slide with its front serrations, and gave it the same aggressive grip texture that makes it feel like it's glued to your hand even when you're sweating in Phoenix heat. The trigger is the usual flat-faced dagger unit. Breaks right around 5 pounds with almost no take-up and a reset you can feel through gloves. Sights are steel, co-witness ready, and the gun ships with a Shield RMSC footprint plate already installed, so you can slap a Holosun EPS carry or 407K on it and never look back. The big party trick nobody talks about is the slide profile. It's literally designed to drop straight into any old-school Glock 19 leather or Kydex holster most of us already have laying around from 2010. That means zero new gear money, which is insane when you're talking about a micro that actually holds 15+1. Downsides, finish wears fast. If you appendix all day, mags can be a little stiff until you hit a couple hundred rounds, and the slide stop is tiny on purpose so you don't accidentally lock it open. Still, I put over 2,000 rounds through mine, carried it through monsoon season, dropped it on desert rock twice. And the only thing that ever happened was a couple of cosmetic scratches my gunsmith laughs at. Every single person I know who runs one still keeps a real carry gun in the safe just in case. Yet none of them have ever needed it. At the end of the day, it's rough around the edges, ugly to some people, and costs less than a date night. But it forced me to ask a question I wasn't ready for. Do I need perfect, or do I need something I'm not afraid to beat to hell and still bet my life on? Turns out the answer was the little Dagger Micro riding appendix right now. Taurus G3C, the second I say the name, half of you are already rolling your eyes and reaching for the comment section to type budget garbage. But hear me out for 2 minutes, because this little brick-shaped polymer 9mm is the single most common pistol I see in actual working people's holsters across 3 different states. And it's not even close. This thing is 6.3 inches overall, 5 inches tall, 1.2 inches wide, with a 3.2-inch barrel and a ridiculously light 22 ounces unloaded, so it disappears in a sticky holster or a Carhartt pocket better than most micro guns that cost twice as much. 12+1 of 9mm Parabellum fully ambidextrous mag release. A restrike-capable striker system, meaning if you get a dud primer, you can pull the trigger again, instead of racking the slide like every other striker gun. And a manual thumb safety that old revolver guys actually like, because it gives them something to sweep off on the draw. The grip angle is pure 1990s Taurus, which feels exactly like the old S&W 3rd gens and the Beretta 92s a lot of cops grew up on, so the transition from wheel guns is stupid easy. Trigger is nothing special out of the box, about 6.5 lbs with some creep and a decent reset. But it's consistent, and the second strike ability is legitimately useful in a $280 carry gun. Sights are basic serrated black rear and a white dot front, but they're metal, not plastic. And the slide is cut for optics if you ever want to throw a Holosun 407K on it. Texturing is aggressive without eating your skin. The accessory rail actually fits real lights like the TL Racker or Streamlight TLR7 Sub, and the magazines are cheap and plentiful. Downsides, finish wears fast. If you appendix carry, early models had occasional striker drag issues that tore Taurus quietly fixed around serial numbers ending in NCA and later, and the trigger reach is a hair long for tiny hands. But here's the thing, nobody wants to admit on camera, the G3C has been through more real-world beatings in tractor cabs, construction sites, and sweaty summer belts than most influencer guns will ever see, and it just keeps running. I've watched a buddy drop his off a tailgate onto concrete, pick it up, and finish the USPSA stage with it. Another guy has 9,000 rounds through his, with nothing but recoil spring changes. It's ugly, it's cheap, and it has zero cool factor. But it's the modern-day high point that actually works. And that's why every small-town range has at least 3 of them in the safe room at any given time. Ruger Max 9. This little sleeper has quietly become the king of old guys who swore they'd never give up their revolvers but did anyway. When it first dropped a few years ago, the internet tore it apart. Sharp edges that felt like cheese graters, a mag release so stiff you needed pliers, and early guns that occasionally decided to turn hollow points into expensive single shots. Ruger actually listened, fixed the texture, smoothed the controls, and turned it into one of the softest shooting, most wrist-friendly Micro 9s on the planet. Overall length is a hair under 6 inches, height 4.52 inches with the flush 10-round mag, 12 plus 1 if you run the pinky extension, barrel just 3.2 inches, and the whole thing weighs 18.4 ounces empty. Basically nothing on the belt. Slide is optics ready from the factory with a cover plate, tritium front sight with a blacked out rear, and the trigger breaks right around 5 to 5.5 lbs with a short reset that honestly punches above its $400 street price. The grip is thin, aggressively textured once they fix the original sandpaper version, and the undercut trigger guard lets you choke up high without getting bit. Recoil is stupid mild for the size, because Ruger tuned the dual recoil spring hard and gave it a fairly low bore axis. You can hammer a full mag of 124 grain plus P as fast as you want, and the dot barely leaves the A zone. Downsides, the mag release still needs a deliberate push if you've got gorilla thumbs, and it's picky about some holsters because the squared trigger guard is a little fatter than a P365 or Hellcat. But every retired cop and grandpa with arthritis I know who switched to one says the same thing. Their hands don't buzz after 50 rounds anymore, and they're shooting tighter groups than they ever did with their old J-frames. It's not flashy, it's not the thinnest, it doesn't have the coolest name, but the Max 9 is the one showing up in holsters and never showing up in the used case. That tells you everything. Stoeger STR-9 is probably the most invisible gun on this whole list, and that's exactly why it belongs here. You walk past it in the case, you scroll past it online, you figure it's just Beretta's budget little brother trying to look like a Glock, and then one day you actually pick one up and realize the damn thing has been quietly outworking half the safe queens everybody hypes. Full-size model, runs 7.44 inches overall, 5.5 inch height, 1.4 inches wide, with a 4.17-inch barrel, and it still only weighs 28 ounces unloaded, so it carries lighter than it has any right to. The compact version drops to a 4-inch barrel and just over 7 inches long, perfect for appendix or 3 o'clock without printing like a brick. What nobody tells you is the grip texture is actually aggressive in a good way. Once it breaks in, the 3 back straps let you dial it in, and the trigger is one of the crispest factory striker triggers under $500, usually breaking right at 5 pounds with almost no mush and a ridiculously short reset. It ships with steel 3-dot sights that are actually tall enough for most suppressor height optic co-witness. The slide has front and rear serrations that work even with sweaty or gloved hands, and the thing is optics ready from the factory with plates for pretty much every major footprint. Internally, it borrows a lot from the Beretta APX design, but ditches the weird trigger bar safety and uses a more traditional firing pin block, which is why you don't hear about light strikes even with cheap steel case ammo. The finish is a night-righted slide that wears fast if you're hard on kydex. But the bore and chamber are cut clean, and it'll feed hollow points all day long. Mag release is reversible, the takedown is stupid simple, and 17-round mags drop free whether they're factory or the cheap Korean aftermarkets. Weak points: the factory plastic sights suck. the slide stop can be a little sticky until you put a couple hundred rounds through it, and early models had occasional issues with the loaded chamber indicator breaking off, but Stoeger fixed that years ago. Point is, the same 5 dudes at my local range have been beating on the exact same STR-9s for 3+ years now. Same scuffs, same holsters, same quiet confidence, while the newest flavor of the month guns come and go. It's not flashy, it's not expensive, and it sure as hell isn't cool on the internet. But it's one of those guns that just keeps showing up on belts because it refuses to give anybody a reason to replace it. CZ P10C. Here's the one that quietly refuses to leave anybody's holster once it gets there. This Czech striker-fired compact sits right in that Goldilocks zone, 7.3 inches overall, 5.2-inch height, 1.26 inches wide, with a 4-inch barrel and a 15+1 capacity that feels way smaller than the numbers suggest. It weighs 26 ounces empty, so it's light enough for all-day appendix, but still heavy enough to soak up 9mm snap without beating you up. The slide has some of the most aggressive front and rear serrations you'll ever grab, deep, wide, and actually useful even with sweaty or gloved hands. The frame is pure CZ'd, 3 interchangeable backstraps, undercut trigger guard, ridiculous grip texture that starts out like 60 grit sandpaper and mellows into perfect after a couple hundred draws. And a trigger that flat out embarrasses most guns, costing twice as much. We're talking 4 to 4.5 lb pull, short take-up, glass rod break, and a reset so short and audible you can feel it in your soul. Optics ready from the factory with a plate system that actually co-witnesses irons, reversible mag release, ambidextrous slide stop if you want it, and a firing pin block plus trigger safety that somehow never dragged the pull. Early models had a stiff mag release, and the grip chewed some people's hands raw. But by 2019, CZ fixed both, and the current guns are damn near perfect. The bore axis is low, recoil impulse is straight back instead of flipping, and the gun just shoots flatter than most striker guns have any right to. You'll still find Glock lifers who won't admit it out loud, but walk into any shop, look at the used rack, and notice the P10Cs never sit there long while everything else cycles through. Guys buy them, feel that trigger, shoot a mag, and suddenly the Glock they came in to replace is the one getting traded. It's not flashy, it's not hyped, it doesn't need to be, it just works, shoots better than it should, and once it's broken in, it molds to your hand like it was custom stippled for you alone. That's why the P10C is the ultimate sleeper. It doesn't beg you to keep it, it just makes everything else feel wrong after you've lived with it for a month. Springfield's Echelon is the one that honestly pissed me off the most when it launched. Because on paper, it looked like Springfield was just late to the modular striker-fired party, with a chunkier slide and a grip that felt like it was designed by a committee who'd never appendix carried a day in their life. I called it a SIG Glock love child, with none of the charm, and half the internet agreed. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm eating every word because this thing has quietly become the single most traded in 4 pistol at every shop I walk into. Guys are bringing in 10-year-old Gen 5 Glocks, duty-worn P320s, even VP9s, and walking out with an Echelon and a stack of extra mags like it's the most normal thing in the world. The slide has front and rear serrations that actually bite, ambidextrous slide stops, and a grip texture that feels like 60 grit sandpaper at first, but breaks in perfectly after a couple hundred draws. The gun ships with 3 backstraps, 2 17-round mags, 1 20-rounder, and a flared magwell on the higher models. Out of the box, it's optics ready for everything from an RMR footprint to Hollow Sun K to the new acro pattern with no extra plates. Recoil is stupid flat for a polymer gun because of the variable interface system that lets the slide ride lower in the frame, and the bore axis is lower than a Gen 5 Glock. Weak points? The early ones had gritty triggers and some light primer strike issues, but everything 2024 and newer seems to have been fixed at the factory. The slide is definitely beefy, so if you're used to a featherweight Hellcat, it feels like a brick at first. And the mag release is a hair mushy until it breaks in. Still, once you put a few hundred rounds through it, the thing just disappears on the belt and shoots like it costs twice as much. I've watched guys who swore they'd never leave Glock run bill drills faster with an Echelon on their first mag, and the look on their face is the same every time. confusion, then quiet acceptance that they just got beat by the gun they used to clown on. That's the Echelon in 2025. Not the cool kid, just the one that keeps winning when nobody's filming. HK USP Compact, if you blink, you'll miss them on the used market. Because the second one pops up, it's gone before the photos even finish uploading. This isn't some nostalgia flex. It's a 20-plus-year-old design that's still quietly embarrassing half the new polymer Wonder 9s in 2025. Overall length is 6.81 inches, height 5 inches, with a hair over 1.3, barrel just 3.58 inches of cold hammer forged polygonal rifling, and the whole thing tips the scale at about 27 to 28 ounces unloaded, depending on the variant. That's basically a slightly thicker Glock 19 that weighs a little more but feels like a vault door when you pick it up. What makes it weird to new shooters is the paddle mag, released down by the trigger guard, and that long, heavy DA trigger with the decocker safety lever on the left side, or both sides on the ambidextrous models. First pull is around 10-11 pounds and gritty as hell when new. Then it drops to a crisp 4.5 pound single action for every shot after. Hostile forged frame, nitro carburized finish that shrugs off rust like it's offended by it. And that beefy recoil spring system that lets the gun run, suppressed, cheap steel case, whatever, forever. The high bore axis looks dated until you actually shoot it and realize the recoil impulse is straight back into your hand instead of flipping like most modern strikers. Controls feel alien if you grew up on Glocks. The grip angle is pure 90s HK and the trigger reach is long, but the second you figure it out, something clicks and you stop shopping. Slide to frame fit is stupid tight. Sights are tall enough to co-witness with most red dots these days if you swap the rear plate. And the variants let you set it up exactly how you want. Downsides? It's thick for 2025 carry standards. Magazines are stupid expensive and only hold 13+1 flush. Parts aren't as common as Glock, and if you like light, snappy, low-bore axis micros, this thing will feel like a brick at first. But the guys grabbing scratched up 2002 or 2005 models for $600-700 and immediately disappearing them into daily rotation don't care about any of that. They just know it's going to work when everything else is a pile of broken plastic and excuses. Beretta PX4 Storm. Yeah, the chunky Italian rotary barrel relic that everyone swore was dead 10 years ago. Yet it's still quietly smoking half the new polymer Wonder 9s in 2025. This thing came out in 2004, looking like a space gun crossed with a brick. 7.59 inches overall, 5.51-inch barrel on the full size, 4-inch on the compact and subcompact models, stands 5.5 inches tall, weighs about 27.7 ounces unloaded with the full-size frame, and still feels like you're holding a small tank. What makes it different from every striker-fired flatboy on the market is that rotating barrel lockup. Beretta stole from the Cougar and perfected here. Under recoil, the barrel spins 45 degrees, slams the impulse straight back instead of flipping the muzzle up. And the result is one of the softest, flattest shooting 9mm service pistols you'll ever touch. Even with +P defensive loads. You get a DA/SA trigger with an exposed hammer, decocker jark safety that can be swapped to decocker only if you hate safeties, interchangeable back straps so it actually fits normal human hands, a Picatinny rail that was there before most companies admitted they needed one. The slide rides inside the frame like a SIG, keeping the bore axis stupid low, and the whole gun is built around the idea that it's going to sit in a duty holster in the rain, snow, or desert for a decade and still run. Downsides? It's thick as hell at 1.42 inches wide. The grip is long front to back, so small hands struggle. Early models had that god-awful aggressive checkering that ate your side raw, and the trigger reach in double action is a hike. But once you shoot one back-to-back with any current micro compact, the difference in recoil management is laughable. Guys who train high round counts or work in cold climates where striker guns start choking on lube swear by it. The rotary system also runs filthy forever because the barrel never tilts and drags carbon across the locking surfaces the way Browning designs do. Bottom line, the PX4 never won the internet, never got the influencer push, and still refuses to die because it's one of the few pistols left that was overbuilt on purpose. If you want something that shoots softer than guns half its size, costs half as much used as a new premium polymer, and will probably outlive your grandkids, this weird, thick, rotary barrel dinosaur is still very much alive and laughing at the trend chasers. Smith & Wesson CSX. Yeah, the little aluminum-framed, hammer-fired Micro 9 that half the internet swore was dead on arrival. When this thing dropped in 2022, people lost their minds laughing. Single-stack 12+1 in a world gone double-stack crazy. Ambidextrous thumbs safety nobody asked for. And a grip that looks like a shrunken 1911 had a baby with a shield. Overall length is only 6.1 inches, height 4.6 with the flush mag, width a razor-thin 1.12 inches at the controls, and it barely tips the scale at 19.5 ounces unloaded. Slide is 0.96 inches wide, barrel a hair over 3 inches, and somehow they crammed real white dot sights and an optics cut option into that tiny package. The magic is the all-metal construction and that single action-only hammer trigger that breaks right around 4.55 pounds with almost zero take-up and the shortest reset you'll feel on anything this small. You get interchangeable backstraps, real aggressive front and rear, serrations, and a flat-face trigger shoe that makes the gun feel way bigger than it is. The thumb safety is crisp, positive, and actually usable as a thumb rest if you ride high. Or you can just ignore it completely, because it's not a condition. One carry requirement. The biggest knocks are the 10 and 12 round mags feel long for the gun, the safety can be stiff out of the box, and some people absolutely hate the 18-degree grip angle if they grew up on Glock. But here's the dirty little secret nobody wants to admit out loud. Once a shooter figures out the CSX, they stop looking for something else. I've watched guys who swore they'd trade it in after the first range trip end up wrapping the frame in skate tape, deleting the safety with a Dremel, or just running it bone stock for years because nothing else in their safe points as naturally or shoots as flat. It's the ultimate love it or hate it pistol. Half the people who buy one bring it back in a week calling it the worst trigger finger workout of their life. The other half quietly modify it, carry it daily, and never post about it because they don't want the secret getting out. That's the CSX in 2025. Still divisive, still flying under the radar, and still making grown men either sell it in disgust or swear by it forever. Glock 48. Here's the one that probably started more quiet conversions than any other gun on this list. When it dropped back in 2019, everybody looked at it and went, "What even is this thing?" Full-size G19 grip crammed into a slim G43X style slide. Single-stack mags holding 10 rounds flush, 6.5-inch sight radius, 4.17-inch barrel, overall length 7.28 inches, height 5.04 inches with the mag in, and a width that's barely 1.1 inches at the slide. It weighs 20.7 ounces unloaded, so it's light enough to forget, but long enough to actually shoot flat and fast. Glock called it the Silver Slimline at launch because of that NPVD-coated slide, and people roasted it for months. Too long for pocket carry, too short for duty. 10 rounds in a world where 15 was the new normal. No modular backstraps, no Gen 5 texture. Front serrations only on later MOS versions. It was the Frankenstein nobody asked for. And yet, something wild happened. Guys who bought one just to see what the fuss was about started leaving their G19s and 43Xs at home. That longer slide and sight radius turned a good shooter into a great shooter without adding real bulk. The balance sits right in the hand like a full size, but disappears under a t-shirt the way a single stack should. Recoil impulse is stupid soft for a carry gun, splits are tight, and the bore axis is classic low Glock, so follow-ups feel almost boring. The factory plastic sights are whatever, but the shield pattern optics cut on the MOS models is cut deep, and co-witnesses perfectly with suppressor height irons. Reloads feel exactly like every other Glock you already own. Mags drop free like they're greased. And because it uses the same G43X frame, every holster maker on Earth already had leather and Kydex ready day one. Weak points? Yeah, only 10 rounds flush. 11 with the +1 pinky extensions most people run. The early silver slides chipped if you looked at them wrong, and the grip is slick when wet unless you stipple or tape it. But 5 years later, the used market is bone dry because nobody who figured the 48 out is willing to let it go. It's the sleeper that refused to stay asleep. None of these are flavor of the month guns. No big marketing, no influencer hype, just pistols that quietly refused to die while everyone argued about the Glock killer. From $300 beaters to a 2K staccato, they all did the same thing. Made a bunch of shooters stare at their safe and mutter, "Yeah, I'm good." The funniest part? The one I clowned on hardest is the exact gun I trust most right now. If you've got that same "I can't believe I carry this" story, drop it below. I read them all. Want the opposite video, all the guns I've hyped that turned into regrets? Say the word. Thanks for sticking around. Hope this saved you some cash or finally pushed you to try that one you've been eyeing. See you on the range.